Today, I'm going to be showing you the basics of gimbals. So, what is a gimbal? A gimbal is a camera stabilizer that removes any shaky movement, allowing for smooth, seamless videography. Now, each gimbal can be set up differently, but we're going to be showing you today the basics of setting up a gimbal with step 1, weight.
Weight is one of the most essential parts you should know about when setting up a gimbal. Gimbals are weight-based, so anything that you may change the distribution of how the weight is on the camera will ultimately affect the gimbal. Stuff as simple as a lens hood, or even a lens cap, or even a memory card can even change the way that the gimbal works. Even stuff like a focal length can even change how the distribution throughout the camera works. Which is why, even though I recommend using something like a prime lens so that you don't change anything and it stays at that solid focal length, I'm going to be using a 28 to 75 camera just to show how these things can work in a gimbal.
Side note.
If you ever do get into video making or want to buy a gimbal, I highly recommend getting a prime lens because of their low aperture rate for easy and really nice depth of field, and the fact that they do not change focal length at all, which means that setting these up can be a one-time use. The only distribution you can change is if you add a lens cap to it. So beyond that, I highly recommend that you get a prime lens if you're a video maker.
Step 2, the gimbal itself.
When setting up a gimbal, there are a few main components that every gimbal should have: the legs, the body, the gimbal itself, batteries, and a screw to screw in the camera. Now that we have our gimbal all set up, it's clearly all out of balance, which is where we go to step 3.
Step 3, balance.
So while we have everything set up and ready to film, one of the main key things is wrong is the measurements. All the measurements are wrong and it is clearly out of balance. You need to properly balance so that it can sit like this when it's all ready. One of the key components right here on the bottom allows you to slide the camera forward or back. This can allow you to choose whether, depending on the size of the lens, whether how far you want to push the camera up or how far you want to keep the camera back. Along with this bottom faceplate, there are 3 main components that allow a gimbal to be stable: the X, the Y, and the Z axis that make sure that when they're all balanced correctly, the gimbal can stand on its own. One of the key things we see here is that the gimbal is falling to its left side. So adjusting the Y-axis knob on the back, we can actually push it so that the weight is a little more distributed to the right side. As we can see here, the X-axis is not allowing it to stay straight and forward. It's constantly wanting to go up. So we have to find a good balance between this going too far forward and going too far back so it doesn't swing all the way back. So you constantly want to try and arrange it so that it can slowly stay in the center. The setup of a gimbal can take a really long time. When I first got mine, it took me an hour just to get the thing properly adjusted. But over time, it definitely gets a lot easier and you do get a better understanding of it. So don't be discouraged if you don't get it the first try. Constantly try and set up your gimbal, try out new lenses, and even have someone help you out. They can really make an improvement on how fast you can set up your gimbal. Everything seems pretty okay on the X-axis so far. The last thing we gotta wonder about is the Z-axis. With the Z-axis, it allows you to hold your gimbal still. It's this bottom one that is the singular crane here on the back. And if you can hold your camera still and it can stand still like this when it's being held up, that means it's adjusted. But as I twist and turn it, it shows that it needs some adjusting. And here we go. Looking pretty okay. But like I said before, why balance matters so much is because each one of these runs off of a motor. And if there's something out of balance with it, like say I change the focal length, it's out of balance now and everything has to be changed back or arranged. And if you end up burning out your motors, you can essentially end up ruining your gimbal. So take that into mind.
And as we can see by these two side-by-side shot comparisons, the difference between using one and not using one really makes a difference.
Well, I hope this video was educational and enjoyable, and it showed you how much gimbals can really change the filmmaking style that you want to achieve. Well, with that being said, happy filming.